Hello, everyone. Kevin and I are back. Another episode of Financial 15, the show where we try to provide some information to improve your situation, do all that in 15 minutes or less. And today we're talking retirement, specifically looking at 4 retirement concepts everyone should know. You're going to want to stick around for this. Some good information.
Yes, definitely. That's one of the things we want to talk about. Lots of questions always on retirement. What should we do? What do we have to look at? How is it supposed to play out for us? Again, if you want to find out more about this or any of the other topics we've talked about, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are more than happy to answer any questions from that, or go to our website at beckerorr.com or like us on Facebook. You'll be able to find all the content that we've done and everything that we're providing for you going forward and answer some questions that way. But to start with today, we want to deal with 4 retirement concepts that everybody should know going into retirement. Right, Clint? These are the things we want to make sure that people know about. Otherwise, your retirement may not be what you think it is.
Yeah, and they're important concepts. So we're not going to get into the nitty gritty here. We're going to talk high level, but just the high level areas that for them we think often are overlooked. One of them is inflation. Now, I know recently we've heard a lot about inflation, certainly heard the numbers, they're getting bigger, but the actual impact of inflation over a time horizon, even if it's a small number, even if it's only 1.5%, 2%, it can compound, it can reduce your purchasing power. Absolutely has to be included and prepared and planned for in your retirement plan. But it's one item I think most folks would overlook, is that impact of inflation over time.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, people don't seem to consider that sometimes as the factor. I mean, $50,000 today in retirement is not $50,000 20 years from now. So, I mean, if you're looking to retire in your late 50s, early 60s, you're going to need more money in your 80s to buy the same things you do today. And again, as you mentioned, it doesn't matter whether that's a small number or a large number. But I mean, beforehand, at that sort of 2% that the governments are looking at, it's something that you can counteract. But I mean, if we're closer to that 5 to 6 number, that can have a substantial impact on what your retirement dollars are, not just 20 years down the road, but 5 years down the road. So definitely something that should be looked at in every financial plan and always looked at going forward is that, you know, even if you want to take 50 today, that doesn't mean that that's 55 years down the road.
You have to account for it. You're simply going to need more money in the future to buy the same things you buy today because inflation reduces your purchasing power. So a key concept there, one you have to include in any retirement plan. A second one here, Kevin, and I can understand how people can trip up here, is there's so many decisions to make when it comes to retirement. There's a lot that can go into a financial plan or into specifically a retirement plan. Understanding the priority of decisions is a key concept. I'll pull up a slide here to help out with this particular one. You've got the primary decisions, the big stuff, in my opinion, like when will I retire? How much will I spend in retirement? And then some secondary decisions. They're still important. However, I think you'd want to answer the primary decisions first, and the answers to those will provide the context to help answer the secondary decisions. Secondary decisions, examples are on the slide there. When should I take my CPP? How do I avoid the old age security clawback? I think sometimes folks focus too much on those and they ignore some of the bigger questions. And I think you answer the big questions first, that'll guide how you tackle the secondary decisions. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think that's perfectly the situation that goes on. Is a lot of people don't look at what the primary decisions are. They look immediately at the secondary ones. And I think it's because they're easier concepts to ask as well. I mean, you know what CPP is? It's just a matter of, well, do I take it here or do I take it there? When 60, 65, they're easier than how much do I need to spend in retirement? So the simpler the question, the faster people want to deal with it. And again, we can judge this just by looking at the videos we've put out. Some of the most viewed ones we've had are on CPP and OAS, not so much how much do I need when I am in retirement. So again, knowing the primary decisions will make the secondary decisions that much easier to be able to deal with. And that's the concept that a lot of people have to get their head around, is knowing what these ones are, then we can deal with everything that comes along those lines. Do you think that's probably the easiest?
Oh, I would agree. They're not exactly easy questions to answer, and nor is this an exhaustive list, right? These are just a handful of examples. There's definitely more questions you'd have to tackle as you go through the retirement process, but sinking your teeth into the big ones. When will I retire? How much am I going to need in retirement? What's my budget look like? That's going to have a larger influence than when you take your CPP. Not that it's not important. It's an important decision when to take your CPP. It's just that the context, the environment is going to be set by those primary decisions. So understanding the priority of those decisions is key. In our opinion, that's the second concept that everyone should understand when it comes to retirement. And a third one here, and this is related, kind of related to what we just talked about, the whole idea of budgeting and understanding
Yes.
what you spend is very important when it comes to retirement planning.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the key concepts overall. I mean, a lot of people, they get that date in their mind. Okay, I'm ready. I need to go. Now I'm gone. And then, well, what do I spend it on? Am I going to spend less now? Am I going to spend more now? Am I going to, is it going to be constant? Is it going to be up and down? These are things that you have to plan for. And again, it always goes back to our three phases of retirement, which are active, passive, and supportive. In the active stage, you're younger usually when you early retirement, and then you're not going to be spending that much different than what you did beforehand. You may not be going to work, but you may go out more. You may travel a little bit more. Health is still a big thing. So the active scenario is probably similar to what you're making right now. Passive, you get a little older, maybe into your late 70s or whatever the case, you're not spending as much. You're not going south as much if you're doing that beforehand. So your expenses become a little less, and then we see probably something on the other end of the scale where it becomes more of a supportive. Well, now it's, do I worry about my health care? Do I have to worry about meds? What's my situation like overall in my health, and where am I going to be living? Do I have to have increased fees for that? So sort of that retirement smile thing that we've talked about, but that's sort of the basics on where the budgeting goes. Don't you agree?
I would. I absolutely would. And I'll move one of the slides away here so you can see the source. This is from Lowe's Financial, a company in the UK. And we agree with their breakdown here of the three phases of retirement. And the concept when it comes to budgeting, at least in my view, is you try to budget for that active phase. I wouldn't worry too much about how much money I'm going to spend at 95. It's important to know that your plan is supported and you're going to have money in that point of your life. But trying to get it to the penny accurate today is probably unrealistic. It's more realistic to focus on that active phase. It's going to be more similar to what you spend today. And that's probably a better concept, a better starting point when it comes to retirement budgeting. But the idea, you need to have a budget. You need to know kind of what you spend. You need to have a good idea of what your lifestyle is going to cost. And that's absolutely going to carry through, at least in our opinion, into that active phase of retirement like you just talked about. And then it will change. So you always have to update your plan to make sure you are on track and it's a realistic representation of your actual spending. But that concept of budgeting is key. And now we'll move on to the fourth one here, Kevin. Another concept that we think everyone should know when it comes to retirement planning. And it's really time horizons. I don't think people really appreciate how long they're going to be retired.
No, and again, I mean, it's a huge factor because everybody keeps thinking, well, okay, I want to last this long, or as long as I have money into my mid 80s, or if I'm something along those lines. Let's remember, you set the Wayback Machine 40 years ago. Average life expectancy was probably, that early 80s at the most, and you're retiring closer to 65. So, 15, 18 years worth of retirement. But I mean, if you look at it today, there's more and more people retiring at 60 as opposed to, say, that 65, or at least doing partial retirement. But let's take a look at that concept. If you retire at 60, theoretically, you got 20 years to live just over that scenario. So that you're planning for 80. But if you make it to 80, now you've got another 7.5, almost 8 years to be able to live. So now you're going to 88. So time horizon is huge to plan for. You can't just sit there and say, well, you know what? I want 20 years of income and I'll go from there, because you could easily go further. And as we've noticed over the last number of, centuries and decades of years, life expectancy is getting longer and longer and longer, both in men and in women. And this is a concept that we really have to take care of.
I would agree. Yeah, and this data here on the screen from Statistics Canada, and it looks at life expectancy once you obtain a certain age, and it does break it down by gender. So you have the yellow there, which is the numbers you were reading, Kevin, which were for men, and then the green shaded zones, which were for women. So if you're 70 in Canada and you're a man, you're expected to live another 13.2 years. If you're a woman, you're expected to live another 16.9 years.
Yes.
So there's a long time span there for retirement. So you could be looking at a third of your life in some cases in retirement. So that's a long time horizon. You want to make sure you plan accordingly for that. And like we talked about just a moment ago, there's going to be different phases of that retirement. Your spending needs are probably going to change as you go through retirement. And perhaps in that latter phase, the spending could actually go up into that supported category when you're talking about healthcare and assisted living. But in key concept here is really just the time horizon, which hard to grasp, but you could be looking at a third of your life, which isn't a bad thing. Retirement could be fun. No. You've worked hard, you've earned it, you can enjoy it, but you certainly want to plan for it. And you got to make sure that the concept of time horizons are adequately incorporated into your financial plan. And the key is the longer you're retired, frankly, the more money you need. And that's probably the big takeaway there. If you shortchange the time horizon, you might think you can retire with a smaller sum of money when in fact you might be living longer and need a larger pool of capital in order to fund yourself throughout all those years of retirement. So 4 key concepts there that everyone should know. Anything else you want to add, Kevin?
No, I think that covers it. Again, as you mentioned, these are high-level concepts. We didn't break down each one. You could spend a video on each concept inside each scenario for those 4 concepts, describing what needs to be done. But again, if you have questions on this or you want to know any more information on the retirement concept, any of the 4 we described or a little more detail, please go to chatwithclintonandkevin.com. We're more than happy. Put your questions out there. We'll answer them best we can, and we'll get the information that you require for it. Otherwise, our website, our YouTube channel, we have tons of stuff on retirement and things along those lines. And as I mentioned beforehand, CPP and OAS videos have been very popular going through. Secondary lines, let's start talking about that high-end stuff first and go from there. Otherwise, that's sort of all I have to add. Closing remarks to you, Clint.
I think you covered it well. And we mentioned higher level concepts. We've actually done some videos already on some of these individual pieces. So keep an eye out for those if you do want a deeper dive on any of those concepts. Otherwise, we'll be back again soon with another video. Everyone stay safe. Take care.